Testing, testing. YouTube feed, okay? I wonder what.
Good afternoon, Moreno Valley College. We'll give it just one more minute for individuals to get settled in. Make sure you have the bio and information sheet, something to write with. Oh, we've got a hand over here, Miss Leslie. So for those of you online, thank you for joining us. We'll get started in just a moment. As you're coming in, make sure you get an information sheet. Make sure you have something to write with. All right. We're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, Moreno Valley College. I'm Monica Green. I'm the Norco College president. It has been a pleasure serving as the chair for the MVC President Search Committee. In winter, Riverside Community College District Chancellor Dr. Waldab Isak announced the beginning of a search to identify the next president of Moreno Valley College. The district selected the Association of Community College Trustees, or ACCT, to assist with the presidential search process. ACCT has conducted over 750 community college searches and brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to this process. ACCT's mission is to strengthen community college governance through education and advocacy. Dr. Bradley Ebersole serves as our ACCT search consultant and has assisted the chancellor and community college throughout this important process. At the beginning of the spring semester, there were 2 one-hour public forums or listening sessions and a student virtual survey that aided in the development of the presidential profile. In early March 2025, the national search for Moreno Valley College's next president commenced. On April 15th, 2025, ACCT delivered a robust and diverse candidate pool. A special note of thanks to our 15 search committee members representing faculty, classified professionals, confidential, and management who selected qualified candidates to interview over a period of 2 days. This amazing, dedicated group of search community members selected 3 highly qualified leaders. Thank you for attending today's first of 3 open forums this week. This open forum is live streamed in a view-only platform. It is now time to turn the facilitation of this open forum over to Graciela Carangella, Senior Human Resources. No, that's not it anymore. Our Director of Human Resources and Employee Relations, who will introduce today's finalists, review open forum ground rules, and moderate the open forum. Thank you, Graciela.
Thank you, Dr. Green. How's everybody doing today? Good. Okay, well, we want to thank you first and foremost for everybody's time. I know that we have commencement coming up and it's a busy time, but we definitely appreciate the campus community coming out. We are delighted to have Dr. Besikof join us today for this presidential public forum. Before we formally welcome Dr. Besikof to Moreno Valley College, let me take a minute to review the ground rules for the public forum this afternoon. We will ask the candidate to provide brief opening remarks, roughly about 3 to 4 minutes. We have 2 general questions that have been prepared to help facilitate this session. If you would like to ask a question, please write your question on a note card and one of our room facilitators will bring it up to the stage. 5 minutes before the end of the session, we will ask the candidate to provide brief closing remarks. When you entered the room, a public comment forum was given to you. We ask you to complete the forum before you leave the room today and hand it to any of those assisting with this event. These forms will be placed in a confidential sealed envelope and delivered directly to our chancellor, Dr. Isak, to be included in their deliberations. Unfortunately, we cannot accept any feedback forms after the conclusion of the forum today. We thank you all and let us begin. Our first candidate, Dr. Besikof, it is our pleasure to invite you to provide a brief opening statement.
Good afternoon, MVC community. Before I begin, I would like to say thanks to everyone at MVC this morning, food services, as well as HR colleagues who have really made me feel welcome and at home, as well as hydrated and fed and ready to go today. It is truly a pleasure to meet all of you today and tell you a little bit about myself. But first, I'd like to talk about MVC for a moment and what I've seen from a distance and what led me to seek this opportunity. Among my things I've done in my pathway as a leader, I've tried to do transformative work. I've tried to do things that make education a reality and education success a true reality for community college students. And as I look at MVC, I see the same great work in progress. I see your tremendous enrollment increases. I see a strategic plan that really highlights the important things, the comprehensive college concept, implementation of guided pathways, honoring student equity and achievement, and increasing diversity, not just in students, but in employees at MVC. And that is part and parcel to a lot of the work that I've done over my educational career. So you might be wondering, why Rudy? Well, I'll go ahead and give you just what I like to call the 3 E's. First, if I am this successful candidate, you'll be getting someone who is an experienced community college leader. I've been in senior administration for 10 years, 15 years as a dean or a senior administrator, and I've been in education since 1989, actually starting my teaching career in France. And along the way, I've gained a lot of valuable experience, but over these past 7 years, really had kind of really a part that led me to seek opportunities like this. In 2018, I became the Vice President of Instruction at Laney College, and 2 years after that, in 2020, I was promoted to the role of President, where I've sat going into this year. Along those lines, though, with that experience has come a lot that I think I can bring to this college as well. I've noticed that you are well into the implementation of guided pathways as part of your strategic plan. This is something, especially Pillar 3, supporting students while on the path, is something that I can bring as far as my leadership. Also, upcoming, I know in the fall of 2026, you will be submitting your report for accreditation, followed by your visit in 2027. As a Vice President of Instruction and then a President, I have been involved in all of those processes collaboratively with the campus community, starting from zero, writing an accreditation report, hosting a visit, and seeing us all the way to reaffirmation. And I know that such efforts do not take place with one college president or one ALO, but an entire campus community. And it's also more rewarding when you do it that way. Along the way also, I see a lot of things coming up for MVC in terms of its planning for the future. I mentioned the strategic plan you're putting together, but as I see you moving forward, I also know that you're working on a strategic enrollment management plan. I've actually participated in either writing or building them in 3 different institutions. Also along the way, I've had an eye on distance education and making sure that it's done in a manner that's equitable. And for that, I've also participated in the writing of distance education planning. So along the way, with a lot of the leadership that's involved in moving an institution forward, I have experience. The second thing is really a devotion that you all have as well to student equity. I truly believe in meeting students where they're at. And there are a number of initiatives that I've worked on to move it forward. Most notably, from 2022 to 2024, we tackled the problem of falling financial aid submissions and used federal and then advocated for state funding in the second year to do a free college campaign. We told our students, just apply for financial aid. If you do that, we'll cover your books, laptop, we'll take care of food, lunch when you're on campus, and also transportation needs. We'll address those as well. And during that time, we saw our FAFSA applications go up 58%, enrollment increased by 25%, our Latina population increased to the point that we became a Hispanic serving institution, 32% more African-American students enrolled, and the most important thing, at the end of the day, we awarded 30% more degrees and certificates. In fact, our valedictorian last year said, I would not have come back to college and gotten my degree if it had not been for free college. It was powerful stuff. So really looking at that, I think that's something that's important. But along the way, looking at ways to support students, making innovations not only in online learning, but also in tutoring. But at the heart of it, the MVC community, looking at professional development and making sure it is also offered equitably. And one area where I've had a particular passion is ensuring classified professionals receive professional development. In fact, last year, as the college president, I invested our college in the statewide Caring Campus Classified Professional Development Initiative. And I'm so proud now that the classified Senate president at Laney College is also at the state level, the professional development coordinator. And finally, the final E, so I've said experience and I've said equity. The final E for me is engagement. If I am the successful candidate, you will see a president that is involved and engaged in the lives of campus. If there are participatory governance committees, I will be there and I will provide leadership where my part of the process is needed. Also, when it comes to things like student life or activities on campus, I'll be there, whether it's just to participate or if offering marks need to be delivered. But out in the community, I will also be present and represent this college. In my time, especially during the Free College Initiative, I've engaged civic leadership. In fact, the mayor of Oakland appointed me to sit on Oakland's Workforce Development Board just because of the work we've done. In Oakland, we have 5 chambers of commerce, and because of the cultivation we've done, one of those chambers is now offering free full memberships to our students, thanks to a grant provided from a local healthcare provider. And so along the way, I've done that. And then also, as I mentioned, when it's come time to advocate for good things that this college is doing for students, just as I have at Laney, I will be there to make sure that city council members, mayors, assembly members, and senators know about the great work we're doing, not only at Moreno Valley College, but in community college as a whole. Along the way, I've been very proud of the work that has happened over the past 7 years. Moving guided pathways forward, getting reaffirmed, increasing enrollments thanks to free college. And it's been a wonderful ride. But often in life, there are times and change comes. And for me, my change is coming on June 30th, and I'm not going to be with Laney College. Our district has decided with its new leadership to move in a new direction, something I understand. But I also embrace the future and would be very proud to be the president of Moreno Valley College.
Thank you, Dr. Besikof. Okay, so while we're waiting for those questions to come in, we're going to go ahead and get started with 2 very general questions that you'll be able to provide some insight on. The first one is, based on what you know about Moreno Valley College at this point in time, what will be your priorities during your first year as our next president?
Okay, so great question. From a distance, learning about you through State Chancellor's Office data from your district, I've certainly learned a lot and a lot about the great things you're doing, but I don't know everything, and I certainly don't have the gift of context. And I think the first priority is to understand the culture and the flavor of Moreno Valley College and just the environment. And the one thing I'm absolutely going to do is to listen to all of you. Essentially, what I want to do is start off with what will be a listening tour. Office hours is something that will stay even after my first year. But in addition to those regular weekly office hours, I will be holding special meetings with the MVC community and also within Moreno Valley, just to learn about the campus, the city of Moreno Valley, and its needs moving forward, as well as the city of Paris. And I think that's something that's very important. However, as we move forward, I mentioned that there are some things coming up. I know about the accreditation self-study that needs to be submitted in fall of 2026. And I want to go ahead and tap in and see on the work about the work that's been done so far and provide leadership there. Also in the area of strategic enrollment management, one of the things that I think is important, and strategic enrollment management is something I define as from the first moment somebody hears about Moreno Valley College to even after they step off the stage at graduation. Everything that happens between that time is strategic enrollment management, meaning it's about all of us. It's about our classified professionals, about our faculty, about administrators, about our students, especially our students' leaders that I had the pleasure of meeting this morning. And really understanding all of our roles and all of the things that take place. And I think that's something that's important. Looking at your strategic enrollment management planning and moving that forward, I would say would be my top priority.
Thank you, Dr. Besikof. Okay, we do have quite a few questions coming in, so we're going to go ahead and get straight to those. Our first question is, as we are here for our students, how do you plan to ensure that students who are justice impacted, first generation, or come from historically marginalized communities have the resources and support they need to thrive?
Okay, so I would answer this, and I answer this question actually coming from a leadership background at institutions that are very strong in terms of serving justice impacted students, not only on campus, but also reaching out and with innovative programming to help students who are serving sentences. So this is something that's important, as well as service to, as we said, disproportionately impacted students and really those needing assistance. One of the great things about just reading about your campus and learning about it and understanding community college and how it works is the fact that community colleges have the capacity to be an educational home for students. Being part of a cohort, having a sense of belonging, I think that's something that is extremely important. So I think that making sure that the visibility of great programs, such as a Guardian Scholars Program, such as your veterans programs, such as the Rising Scholars programs, making sure that the visibility of those is something that is really public as we brand the college to the community. I think that's something that's very important. The second thing that's critical is making sure that those programs, those learning communities, are funded and supported. Continuing to advocate and communicating the numbers of students, not only to Chancellor Isak, but also to our elected officials, so that they understand each year as the governor prepares his budget from January all the way into the year, that those are earmarked as priorities that we can all see when the statewide budget book comes out that communicates special funds available to support students. And then finally, a colleague of mine once said, don't just be visible, be present. As the president, I think it's an imperative for me, for all learning communities, that each and every one of those students and staff know that I am there as their number one support, not only at the beginning of the year, but also during the year, and then especially at the end of the year, for what quite frankly are just the most moving of celebrations of achievement.
Thank you, Dr. Besikof. I have your next question. What is your experience with CTE programs with outside accreditation bodies and requirements?
Thank you for the question. I touched on my experience with accreditation. And in that role, I've served as a faculty member. I was writing standards. As a dean, I was reading whole reports. And then you heard about basically my vice president and president experience. Also, ACCJC has asked me twice to sit on visiting teams to actually lead and chair them. Along with that, I also know that a lot of career programs have industry standards that need to be met. And for example, I know that colleges where I've served that have had nursing programs, cosmetology programs, and others related to, for example, electricity, have accreditation requirements. Those are not things you write improvement plans for. Those are things you either meet the standard or you don't. So if you're going to have career programs at a college, they have to have the unwavering support of college leadership, not just in voice, but also in resources.
Thank you. The Ben Clark Trading Center is responsible for 27% of Moreno Valley College's FTEs. Ben Clark Training Center is partnered with many local, state, federal, and other constituents. So this is a two-part question. As president, how will you work to foster relationships between Moreno Valley College and our public safety partners? And as president, how do you see your role as it relates to the curriculum being offered and the basic and in-service training courses at the Ben Clark Training Center?
Thank you. So as far as my role, and I think it goes back to the first question that was asked, what would happen during the first year? In terms of getting to know the community, I really see it, of course, as the MVC campus. I see it as elected political leadership. I also see it as fellow educational partners within the community, our K-12s and our other institutions of higher education, and then also our elected officials. But where I also see it is partnerships with business and industry. One area that I've emphasized in terms of my outreach has been Chamber of Commerce leadership, because they really hold connections to hundreds of people within the business and industry communities. But within those, especially with the Ben Clark Center, there is a very specialized group of potential employers. So during that first year especially, and doing this in tandem with faculty, lead faculty, and then also administrators and staff connected with these programs, introducing myself out in the community and being someone who's seen as really the leadership at the college as we move forward and establishing those relationships. I would say that would consist of a couple things. Number one, inviting them to campus for a cup of coffee with me, I think, and maybe just showing them the campus and perhaps things that are new if it's not their first time. The second thing I would say is definitely getting out into the community, typically after work, because responsibility in the day is here. But getting out to events that maybe they're putting on, advisory meetings, things like that, and really doing that, and also taking along fellow MVC colleagues just to engage, because at that point, it's not just telling them about MVC, but listening to them about their needs. And most often I've found in those situations when you're out in the community engaging, especially with an industry partner, the first thing they say to me is, we're hiring, right? So that's often what happens. So I think establishing that relationship and making sure that those external partners feel it's a two-way relationship is something that's very important, and really something that you set up for later down the road when either you or the partner on the outside have needs to articulate. The second part of your question talks about faculty and curriculum, and this is a valuable question. And since 2017, I have had a lot of varying levels of connection with, at the state level, the Strong Workforce Initiative and the funding and a number of the things that have happened, not only at the campus level, but also regionally, and understanding that. And where I see the role of a president in curriculum is this: really being there to ask, look at program reviews from those CTE disciplines and see what the resource needs are, and see if those resources are available. And if they're not, really being kind of that agent to get out either at the state level or in the community to make a case for Moreno Valley College to ensure that resources are available. The other thing that I think is valuable, especially, and I've seen this in partnerships we've had at Laney with the building and skilled trades, we've had industry partners engage us. And a lot of the time they're just as interested in students and seeing them complete. That has led to things like scholarships. It has led to donations of equipment, but also there have been engagements that have taken place that have allowed for essentially opportunities for faculty to develop curriculum within career and technical education, but also for faculty with their professional expertise to provide input to that industry partner. And just as a president engaging an industry partner, that really needs to be a reciprocal relationship. I see the president as supporting CTE faculty as that they have that same symbiotic relationship with industry and its partners.
Thank you, Dr. Besikof. Okay, on to our next question. Many college presidents boast Hispanic serving institution status, but do little or to nothing to advance the retention and engagement and success of Hispanic students. What will you do to walk the HSI talk?
Well, first, I'm going to see what the needs are. I think that's important, but I hope my answer is going to show a bit of my commitment. I mentioned before our Free College Initiative in 2022 that we had done that, and then we became a Hispanic serving institution. But it wasn't just because of the Free College Initiative. I think one of the responsibilities of a president is to plug a campus into resources that are out there, and in this case, nationally. And what I mean by that is this. From 2018 until 2023, my college was really on the threshold to getting HSI designation, Hispanic Serving Institution designation. But what I was able to do was draw on some past experience. And the first thing that I did was I went to my campus community and I said, you know what, I think we need to plug in nationally to get resources, and if nothing else, professional development. So the first thing we did was we made a commitment, a fiscal commitment, to be members of the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities, or HACU. And we did that for 4 years before we got our status. Then, once we attained our status, we engaged with HACU to actually have a student and employee, essentially a professional development day on campus to do that, and to continue and to really raise that definition of what it means to be an HSI. And at the end of the day, what it meant for a number of our students who attended were scholarship opportunities, which was outstanding. But we didn't stop there. Again, being a leader and kind of keeping my ear to the ground and watching things that were out there, HACU actually launched what was called the Volare cohort, which was essentially designed to have not just community colleges, but universities form a cohort to learn about effective institutional research practices to better leverage HSI grant opportunities. I am so very proud that in the very first year of the Volare cohort, Laney College was one of 3 California community colleges nationally that was part of this. I do believe a president's role, especially in advancing retention and success and closing equity gaps, has to do with putting a college in the spotlight and doing things that are important. But another thing that I would say locally that's been critical is that along the way to advance student success, we really did a lot of research with our students and looked at our own performance data as a college. And one of the things that we were finding, especially in our online classes, was that we weren't necessarily retaining students at the same rate as face-to-face classes. Maybe sounds familiar. So one of the things that we did, and this was an initiative that really came from our team, was we resolved to go ahead and take our tutoring resources, and we still did by appointment tutoring for disciplines, but overall 90% of our tutoring activities roughly were devoted to essentially information competency training, and then also doing training for things like engaging the Canvas shell to help students stay in classes, especially if they were assimilating while online. So in a number of ways, this question is very near and dear to me. And as a president, I feel it's my role to be part of that leadership, but also do it very collaboratively.
Thank you, Dr. Besikof. So this note cards preface the question by letting you know that it's a pleasure to have you with us today, and that your leadership at Laney College is absolutely inspiring with the 30% increase in graduate rates. So the question is, as Moreno Valley College continues to face challenges with graduation rates, particularly among African-American males, what is your plan to bring them to MVC, and how will you support Black student programs for Umoja and Amen students?
Okay, so first, one of the incredible programs in the state is Umoja. And just over the last 5 years, to see our cohort grow at Laney has been something that's been inspiring, and really thanks in great part to some incredible staff and faculty who have advanced it. And I think, again, having, and I see this in your planning, having MVC be an educational home for students is important. My most meaningful experience as a college student was being part of a cohort and getting that personal attention. And I think that's something that's extremely important. And certainly we can look to faculty, we can look to staff, we can look to administrators to help and support students. But quite honestly, it's often the mentor of somebody who just graduated, somebody in the community who knows about going to college, and engaging them as well, really in this call to action to get more students on campus, and not just getting them on campus, but succeeding in their classes, identifying their pathway, tinkering with their pathway, as many of us have done as college students, and then seeing that way to graduation. I think really a mentoring program is something that is critical and of support. But I also think that, like so many things, awareness is important. Going back to the free college campaign that we had, again, it was centered around getting students to apply for financial aid, or in the case of undocumented students, getting them to submit the California DREAM Act. And along the way, what we learned was this: for students who weren't completing FAFSA to moving to completing FAFSA, there were two initial reactions. Financial aid, what's that? And then the second one was, oh, financial aid, well, those students apply for it. I don't apply. I probably wouldn't get it anyway. Those are, and I'm glad to see students nodding yes. That was kind of the initial reaction we had. And a lot of the time, community colleges and the services they offer are not necessarily known within their communities. And that was one of the lessons I learned along the way. So I think really a dedicated campaign, reaching out to K-12 partners, reaching out to adult learning centers, reaching out to even universities where students may potentially transfer to promote MVC and its Umoja program and all the great resources it has. I think getting that awareness campaign out there will bring students eventually to succeed.
Thank you. Okay, I have the next question. What is your experience working in a multi-college district? And can you share how you'll balance the needs of Moreno Valley College and the district needs?
So, let's see, my first dean's position when I was in the Yuba Community College, that was a 2-college district. I was in the LA College for which is 9 colleges, and then my current district has 4 colleges. So certainly know what working in a multi-college district is like, and certainly appreciate the question. Really, what I think is important is that whoever the successful candidate is needs to ground themselves in the planning and the priorities of Moreno Valley College. I think that's the first critical step. To understand really the things that are absolute musts for the campus community and highlight those. And then the role of the president is to tell the story of Moreno Valley College within the community, but also at the district level, so that those priorities are understood and established. But along the way, if you're going to talk to people, you also have to listen. So hearing what the priorities of Riverside City College are, hearing what the priorities of Norco College are, I think that's also something that is important for this role. Not only to kind of have that understanding of the landscape, but also to see where, and often the question that's asked comes from a place of really kind of, we have to advocate for us. But if you do that, if you have that kind of expansive communication dynamic across a district, sometimes what happens is the priorities you have, another college may have, which guess what? Means that they can be your ally as you advocate in certain areas. The reality is across California's community college districts, the number of students within a multi-college district attending just one college, it's not a high percentage. And the ones attending are swirling at more than one college. That's higher than what you might think. So I really think that, yes, articulating MVC's needs is critical, but also listening around the district to see what other needs are. In the short run, it may make for an easier student experience, but I also believe in the long run, it's something that will benefit MVC and its students. Along the way also, what I would say about this is that as I am doing the work of advocacy and as others are doing it too at MVC, that we talk to each other about what our stories are and who we're talking to, and that we talk about what the result of that has been. It's not just a president doing that. It absolutely is not, because like so many things in community college, it's about all of us.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and discuss distance education. So what are your thoughts on the future of distance education, and how can Moreno Valley balance the push towards distance education along with the mission to provide quality instruction as well as community?
Okay. So the first thing I would say is, and maybe I'm just going to push this as an assumption or away from an assumption. When a lot of people hear distance education, they think of it as, and this is one of the benefits of it, somebody doing college from their living room, right? That's often where it is. But I believe that one of the keys of distance education is learning support services on a campus. Because for many in a community, the access to technology, the access to information technology, the access to something as simple as Wi-Fi is not a given. And so providing that and looking at the continuum of what are the solid pillars of equity within distance education, I'd say the first thing that you have to look at is how is a campus providing access to technology for distance education students who, guess what, might be coming to campus because that's their technology option. And I think that's one way to look at it. I think the next thing to look at is to look at issues of equity as it relates to access to technology. And I've been fortunate to sit on the statewide affordability task force as it relates to student basic needs and costs of college. And one of the things that we've looked at is broadband as one of the biggest issues, or Wi-Fi. During my own leadership, what I've done is I've actually partnered, and we did this a few years ago, with the city of Oakland, and we were a big partner in the Oakland Undivided initiative, which essentially was a partnership providing no or low cost Wi-Fi. And that was something that we did. And I think that's something that's very important. So that's kind of on one end with kind of the technology and the stuff, if you will, right? On the other end, though, is the class experience. Really engaging our faculty, especially our faculty professional development leadership, to look at things to do in terms of professional growth activities so that students in an online class feel a sense of belonging. When you are in a classroom with a bunch of other people, there's culture, right? That gets built. But if you are studying, whether it's in a computer lab by yourself or at home, there is a measure of isolation that's there. What are good pedagogical practices that mitigate that, to make a student feel that sense of community within a class? And I say this because I imagine, for those of you who've taken classes, you might remember the professor, you remember the content, right? But in the great classes right there, you probably remembered great classmates. That's a crucial component. So really taking those steps and looking at the whole experience of the online student is something that is very important. In terms of looking at need, and I heard modality in that question a little bit, Moreno Valley College, in terms of its balance, it's actually a lot like ours is. And at Laney College, essentially 6 classes in 10 are career education. Things like welding and carpentry, right? And not exactly something you imagine on Canvas. Along the way, though, I do think that what we've done is we've looked at, through professional development and through engaging like the California Virtual Campus, the Online Education Initiative, bringing in state resources around professional development, that we are truly meeting students where they're at. But where they're at, especially in the digital world, is always going to be something that's changing, and we're going to have to change with the times.
And let's hold that thought on the digital world and move on to our next question regarding AI. Okay. So I have a 2-part question that's somewhat related. The first one is, what is your vision of artificial intelligence in higher education? And the second one is, what steps have you or would you take to combat student bots?
All right. So I definitely, this is a great question. First of all, what I would say is that in terms of AI at its capacity, in terms of the ways it can benefit students and also benefit employees, if it's not already in place, I think a task force or a work group to take a look at AI and how it's evolving and how it's changing. I think that's something that's very important on the front end because there are so many benefits to it that are there. Along the way, though, there are also challenges. And, you know, I just, as someone who's taught English, when I hear AI, I immediately think, please don't plagiarize. You know, that's kind of been something that's been the knee-jerk reaction. I think really working with faculty, as well as IT and other technology staff, to really look at AI platforms and really assignments and practices to identify bots, critical thinking assignments early on, for example, would be some things that would work along that way. But also maybe looking at, especially if bot rates are high, looking at doing things with waiting lists so that as we do identify the bots and drop them from rosters, we are able to have more students entering classes who thought maybe they couldn't get in. And I think that's something that's important. Along the lines of academic integrity, though, I also think there needs to be a project that we have on campus that really discipline by discipline has our faculty and our faculty leadership informing prospective students about AI and policies on AI, and also just any policies and procedures around it as it relates to academic integrity as we move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Besikof. We're going to give you a little bit of a water break. Okay. So your next question, what does transparent leadership mean to you? And how will you create accountability for your promises to students and our campus community?
One sentence I should never have to say while I'm president is I'm going to be transparent now. Transparency should be a given. Just speaking very selfishly, when you're honest, you don't have to have a good memory. So, and I've often found that's a good way to live. One of the things about my leadership style is that I definitely try to be inclusive in terms of leadership. If you are a Senate leader, a union leader, a student leader, or a member of my leadership team, especially my cabinet, you can count on regular meetings and agenda and updates as being part of those conversations. That's something that's really critical, because I do believe that a college president is only as good as the transparency level and the level of collaboration. And when it's come to advancing an accreditation report, strategic enrollment management plans, free college initiatives, if you're not someone who really models your ethics on the front end, people aren't going to follow you. And that's something that I found just over time is to be more than true. In terms of accountability for transparency, I think one of the things that is really important is that in terms of leadership and in terms of the piece that we provide, especially as a college president within leadership, there are certain things that need to be expected of me. And especially in my first day of leadership, when I meet with people, I'll probably have a list of 6 to 10 points that people working with me can expect in my own ethos as a leader. And one of those is an undying commitment to effective communication. Now, if I asked all of you to define what a hammer is, I'm guessing all of us would come up with pretty much the same thing. Some people might have mallets, sledgehammers, but we'd all have kind of the same idea. If I gave you the word leadership, though, right? I'm guessing looks like there are about 100 people here. We'd probably have 100 different definitions. Effective communication, probably within one person, there are 3 definitions, right? So I say that to say that as a really effective leader, and there are moments like this when I've had to learn too, you redefine what effective communication is. As you move from an all Zoom world to people coming back face to face, as you make transitions, as you have AI, and as you have those things, you have standards of effective communication that you have to live up to. And for me, that's always been a work in progress, but I've always tried to engage things. For example, I have a weekly office hour as president. What I sometimes do is change the day and time so I can meet more people, or I'll get out of my office and hold it somewhere on campus. Also, you need to communicate more effectively with something that came back to me. And one of the suggestions was do a podcast. And I've got one of those too. So when it comes to transparency and effective communication, I do believe it's something we're always chasing. But along the way, when you chase things, you can have moments of excellence.
Thank you. Okay, so I have two note card questions that I'm just merging into one because they're along the same lines. So due to the political climate, our undocumented community and our LGBTQIA+ students have critical needs right now. What are specific actions you have taken or would take to ensure undocumented students and LGBTQIA+ students, regardless of their status, have equitable access to resources, that they feel safe on campus and supported academically?
Thank you for the question. This question is near and dear to me. When I became the president, actually, those two groups that were just mentioned, there definitely was a community. And there were, there was basically, I remember it was called the Lavender Project, is the group, the LGBTQIA+ group at Laney. And I remember like a special kind of email list serve that I was privileged enough to be included in, and there were events and things like that took place. Also, among our undocumented students, there were a number of resources that were articulated, that were available at no cost. But to me, both of those things needed a next step. And if you're going to be a college that invests in guided pathways, if you're going to be a college that supports learning communities, it's one thing for a president to say, yes, we stand behind you, we support you, but you've got to walk that talk. You've got to find places in your budget to support. And the question, what have I done, or what have we done collectively? I'd answer with this. 2 years ago, and this was before the funding was made available, we opened the Undocumented Community Resource Center at our college. And also, this year, working with leadership, and we have a great ESOL transgender studies professor who really led this, and we provided support. We opened a center for LGBTQIA+ employees and colleagues. And this is something that we did. But really moving forward, if you think about the state chancellor's office and Vision 2030, it isn't just about the physical space, it is about the resources. And whether it's been those two centers, our basic needs center, these are things where somebody visiting will not only have campus and district resources available to them, but will be plugged into local and county resources as well. Bringing things such as free counseling, bringing in other things such as activities and sessions and other things along those lines really is a means of meeting students where they're at. And it's something at the end of the day, if we're going to say that we support learning communities of students, we've got to show it in our budget and in our resources.
Thank you. Okay. So in regards to federal funding and cuts that have been happening to funding and education, what is your plan to ensure specifically classified professional jobs are protected as categorical funds continue to be impacted?
Well, one of the nice things about categorical funds is once a year you get a chance to make your case. And that was a lesson I learned in 2023 when federal funding was ending a lot of our free college initiative. My team and we had a chance to engage some leaders really to make the case for state funding to be available. And in 23-24, it was. I think something that's very important at a college is its ability to measure the work it's doing. Colleagues, we all do program reviews, even a president's office does one. And those are opportunities to look at your data, look at students, see how their learning experience is being impacted, where you're doing great things and where you need to do better, and the resources that you need behind that. And I think that's something that's very important. And having that commitment articulated, not into a college's grant fund plans, but into a college's plans, lays the groundwork for options of multiple funding resources as you move forward. And I've seen that in countless instances where that's happened. So along the way, one of the things that I think is absolutely critical, and it's not just about the president of Moreno Valley College, it's about leadership in the entire district, is telling the students stories to show where the needs are, and behind that, where the staffing needs are and the staffing professional development needs are, to make that case so that when the next year of budget, special budget funds or grant funds comes out and are announced, you put yourself in the best possible position to have those resources available. Now, having said that, I feel like also though, in that approach by itself puts too much weight on one pillar of your house. The other thing you can absolutely do, especially since you have industry partners, is basically take that same story that you tell legislators and tell it to those hiring people in your health sciences. Often big, large healthcare corporations, they have their own private foundations. Making those cases for support, doing some of your own fundraising work, that makes you less reliant on state budgets. And it really gives you your own autonomy, at least to a small degree to start, as you move forward. And you ensure not just the programs and services you provide, but you work further to ensure the place of the employees who provide them.
Okay, thank you. So given that you haven't had prior direct engagement with our student body, what strategies would you suggest to help the associated students at Moreno Valley College student government better serve their students? And also, how do you plan to proactively connect with students to ensure they know who you are and what you stand for through meaningful engagement?
So certainly the listening sessions that I mentioned at the beginning of my conversation would be part of that plan. And of course, students and the outreach to students would absolutely be part of that. And that's important. But along the way, you know, and there was a question about distance education. I think there's a modality component to this. And I say it to say this. My experience has often been, as a college vice president or a president, engaging groups of students who don't know me. Often if it's just me asking the questions, there will be some response. But if I co-facilitate with, for example, the student body president, what I often find is that more students come forward and speak up and participate. So I think, again, a lot of my leadership is about collaboration. I think one of the steps I would absolutely do is reach out to student government leadership or just to students throughout the community to really ask them to join me in facilitating and really working to understand the student voices. The other thing that I think is important and actually has been part of my leadership is that throughout participatory governance committees, making sure that those student seats are filled and that student voices are at the table when leadership is the topic of discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Besikof.
And then also just in terms of getting to know students and doing outreach, I think attending a number of activities is something that's important. And then also having just some special sessions of meet and greets as opposed to formal Q&A.
Thank you, Dr. Besikof. Okay, you've survived this far, huh?
All right.
Okay, so this is going to be our last question. Okay. And then after this question, we'll close up with some concluding comments. Okay, so our last question is, if you are the chosen candidate, do you intend on being active and or possibly living here in the Moreno Valley community? And lastly, what attracted you to Moreno Valley College?
Okay, so yes and yes. First of all, as far as my leadership as the president of Laney College, one of the key characteristics of it is that if you speak to elected officials, people in industry, city council members, yeah, I know Rudy. That's often the response that happens. And not just because they met me once and I gave them my card. It's because I attend events in the community. I think that's something that's very important. And one of the blessings that I've learned about college leadership is that when you are engaging external stakeholders outside education, most of the time, because they have daytime jobs too, a lot of their kind of windows for engagement are after work or community events on weekends. If you take a look throughout just the past 5 years in Oakland, if there have been community festivals like the Lunar New Year Festival in Oakland, Chinatown, or if there have been Chamber of Commerce meetings or info sessions, one of our leading industries had a ribbon cutting ceremony. At all of those things, I was there representing the college, and if I wasn't there, somebody who was part of my team that was known to that external partner was there for me. So being engaged in the community is actually really central to who I am as a president. So I would say that absolutely. In terms of what attracted me to Moreno Valley College, again, just looking at your college from a distance, I see a lot of the work you're doing and just really that priority on seeing students to that stage of graduation and then seeing them on to transfer to that career opportunity and really encouraging them to pay their experience forward to other students. When I think about, for example, your MoVal program, which not just engages career education students, but helps them meet the cost of living, quite frankly, and not just the true cost of college. I think that's something that's important. With our investment in guided pathways over the last 7 years, there have been a number of challenges along the way, but one of the big statewide challenges is that community college students, in some districts, they take almost 90 units to get a 60-unit degree, which means they're borrowing essentially past their junior year to get a 2-year degree, which means when their senior year comes, financial aid doesn't. But what I think that's great about Moreno Valley College and then studying you and studying your data is that 66 units to complete a 60-unit degree. That's next level. That's great. And so that's something that I think that is important. And as I read through your strategic plan, and anytime I've looked at colleges or looked at opportunities, I always look at those things. That really spoke to my educational heart, just its value in students, in student basic needs, equity, and just all of those things, and providing that educational home for students, which is what MVC seems to want to do in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Besikof. We have about 3 minutes left. So at this time, we'd like to invite you to provide some final comments to our community in support of your candidacy.
All right. Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity and also thank you for the water. My throat got less scratchy as I went through this. It has truly been a pleasure just to meet MVC leadership throughout the day. And I know this is a busy time of the year. And I just want to say that I appreciate the few minutes that some have given me today, and as well as all of you. The future, I know when we look at the future landscape, sometimes there might be opportunities to become cynical. There might be opportunities to kind of question what we're doing. But one of the things that I love about community college is it remains that place of opportunity for students. And it also, especially because if we work to honor employees and their diversity and also their professional development and pathways, it's a place to honor them as well. My background is teaching, and in addition to teaching English and English as a second language, I've also taught education courses, and that idea of preparing people to enter classrooms or empowering them. Within my own leadership team, I've had 10 individuals go on to promotional positions. 2 of them have become college presidents. I really believe that success and investment in people is what makes a community college great. And I say that for the whole college community, and something that's important. As we move forward also, I would also say to you that looking at the career programs that are served by MVC within the community, that have been some have been mentioned today. I am someone who can reach out and engage. One of the things that I've done within my dissertation, I focused on fundraising and the roles that presidents play. And one of the things that I've done over the years is build kind of a fundraising plan to reach out into the community. That involves 2 things. First of all, it involves a president who can tell the story of your college to those outside. The great work you're doing, the many things that transcend the buildings that are here. The second thing is to articulate student need, and that's something that's important. And in doing that, often I start with just contributions of employees on campus, employee giving, and sharing that story, talking about guided pathways, showing guided pathway maps, the areas of interest and things, those things. And you would be stunned at how much the community embraces them when they see them. I'm someone who, moving forward collaboratively with all of you, will build a network with the communities we serve here, and will create opportunities for those communities to give back to us as something that we do. Because when we create partnerships, we do so many great things. Also along the way, in addition to being interested in professional development and reaching communities, I certainly believe in innovation. I'm someone who all the time tries to be the best listener in the room. I'm not always the best listener in the room, but I try. But I always believe that that is important, because by myself, I'm not capable of a great idea. It's only when I collaborate with others that things that might be good potentially become great. And I look forward to the chance to potentially chasing greatness with all of you here at Moreno Valley College. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to thank everybody for your time and coming out here today. If you can please ensure that you complete your comment card and hand it to one of us up front, we'd be more than happy to accept it and provide it to our Chancellor, Dr. Isak, in consideration for the finalists. Thank you again.